Hey, this is Elijah with the Oxygen team, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at hero sections. This is part of a series covering the basics of a website. We previously talked about headers, and now the next logical element as you work your way down a website is the hero section. Now, what is a hero section? Well, technically, it's an area that immediately shows up on the screen under your logo and menu, typically. You've probably heard folks talk about above the fold. Well, your hero section is probably just about everything that appears above the fold when your website is loaded. I've got a few examples pulled up here to help us visualize what a hero section is and what it should do for your website. So let's jump over here, and we're going to ignore the fact that this is for Webflow and not Oxygen, except for that I just called it out explicitly. So now we're going to ignore the fact that I called it out explicitly as well. So we see that we're on a website called Andy Hook. We've got a profile picture up there at the top left. They're available for hire. But if we just look at the area above this big heading, we wouldn't really understand what the site is, or specifically what Andy does and why we might want to hire them. That's where the hero section comes in. It's that splash of information that hits you as soon as you visit the site. So we can see here that Andy does high-end Webflow design and development, agency quality websites with the personal touch of a freelancer. And we have two calls to action. One is work with me, which is the most prominent because it's a darker color. And the other one, which is de-emphasized a bit using the background color, is learn more. And we have an enticing reason to scroll down. This little peek of a screenshot might make us curious and make us want to see what the rest of the screenshot looks like. So let's go ahead and scroll down. And I presume that this is something that Andy has worked on. And that presumption is confirmed when we see down here at the bottom left this little concept indicator. So this is the hero section. Everything above the fold, meaning the things you don't have to scroll to see, serves the purpose of impressing the visitor immediately and providing the information they need, which is what is this website, why am I here, and what can I do here? Let's go ahead and take a look at another example that I found. This hero does look quite a bit different, but it serves the same exact function. It's impressing us and providing a really good indicator of the site's visual style with these watercolor paintings on either side. And it's telling us exactly what the website is. It's a website for the ask/offer matching platform. And what can we do here? We can request Slack access. So it cuts straight to the point, introduces the primary concept of the page, and gives you an option. And I especially like here how it has a single call to action. So we're not introducing any decisions that need to be made. We're just giving them the one option that there is, which is request access. I've got a couple more examples here, so let's jump over to this one. This one's much more cookie cutter. It looks a lot like something you would see in an off-the-shelf template, and that's because it's a business product. It needs to present itself as solid and predictable and established, which this does. But you can see the hero section gives us some information that we probably want immediately if we're visiting this site. It's telling us what the benefit of this product is, less time chasing checks, and who it's for and who it's built by. We also have a dual call to action layout, though I would probably not really count a login as a call to action because this is really just for returning visitors who have already signed up and want to access their account. So I would call this schedule a demo button the only call to action, though I think having the login button here does detract a little bit. And we also have a bit of trust building happening here in the hero, which is this section down here at the bottom left that shows the accepted insurance companies that this product is compatible with. So that's super helpful. If I was a roofer, I would probably know immediately based on this hero whether this product was something I wanted to explore or not. So with all these examples in our pocket, I think it's time to jump into Oxygen and show you how to build one of these heroes. Now, a hero is a very basic element, or it can be. So basically, all you need is a section. Once you have the section, you put whatever you want in here. Make sure it's at the top of the page, and there's your hero. So let's go ahead and drop in a heading. We'll make this an H1 since we don't have any other H1s on the page yet. And let's blow up the size quite a bit. Now I'm going to go into Oxygen settings here and just set the global fonts really quickly. I want to change the text font to, I don't know, Enter maybe. Now let's use Fig Tree. This is a pretty cool newer font that I've been enjoying lately, Fig Tree. And it's got a nice heavy weight for these headings. So let's go ahead and set the text color to black. We're just going to build the most basic hero to begin with. So our font size is good. Let's increase our font weight. 900 might be way too much. Let's drop it down to 800. And we also want to center this. So we'll go to advanced typography and go ahead and set text align to center. Now, what does this website do? We make great hero sections. And we'll also want to center that element within the container. So again, as soon as we land here, we're going to know exactly what this website's for, what the product or company does. Now we can add a little bit of an overline or underline or something like that. So let's just do an overline here. So this text element's going to go up here. And we're going to give it a bit of a treatment here under advanced typography. We're going to set the font size to, I think it's fine like it is. We're going to set the color to a not quite black to de-emphasize it a bit, but watch your color contrast for accessibility reasons. Make sure it's not too light. And you may find that you only want to de-emphasize it with size and not both size and color. In this case, I just lightened the black a very slight amount to give it a subtle effect. Now we're going to set it to uppercase here, and we'll just add some text. We'll say Hero Maker or something like that. And then we'll add some letter spacing as well. Let's try 4 pixels. That looks pretty cool. So let's go ahead and add another text element down here to provide some more details as to what we mean by we make great hero sections. Fast, performant, and eye-catching visuals for your site. Now I want to use this same color here, so I'm just going to copy and paste that across. We'll paste that in there. And then let's add a little bit of extra space below this. But first, let's go to settings and go to our heading section. And let's set the line height to 1.2. I feel like the line height was a bit aggressive there. So now we can go ahead and add some spacing to this section. Now we could add top and bottom margin to this hero, or we could add, top margin to this. But instead, I'm going to use gap. So let's start with 16 pixels. Let's try 32. That looks pretty good. Now we need our call to action. So I'm going to add a link wrapper, and I'm going to add some text within that link wrapper. And we're going to say, enhance your designs now. Perfect. Now we're just going to give this some styling treatment. So we're going to use our breadcrumb here at the top of the properties pane to go to the link wrapper, and we'll go to advanced size and spacing and set some padding. Let's do 16 pixels on the top. In fact, we'll set that all the way around. And then we'll just add some extra spacing on the left and right to give it that kind of classic button aspect ratio. Now let's go ahead and set the background to, let's do a gradient here. So we'll add a couple of colors, maybe only 2, but we'll start here. Let's do like a light pink or purple, something pretty vibrant. And then we'll do maybe a green or something here. That might look cool. That looks pretty good. Let's set the angle to something like that. And now we need to go to advanced borders, and we're going to go ahead and set the border radius to something like 8 pixels. That gives us that kind of button look. Now let's go ahead and adjust our typography for this link wrapper. We'll go to typography and set the color to white. Again, watch your color contrast. Make sure that this is going to be legible for folks that are visiting your site. And we'll set the font weight up a bit higher, maybe 600. And then let's just bump up the font size. I think we're at 16 pixels, which is the base font size. Let's try 2 rem here. So that's really big and bold. It might be kind of cool depending on the type of site you're building, but let's do, instead of that, let's do 1.5. And then we're using gap to space these elements out evenly, which is great if you want them all evenly spaced. But in this case, I want a little bit of extra breathing room for my button, so I'm going to go ahead and go to advanced size and spacing and add some margin. Now we have 32 pixels of gap, so keeping that in mind, we can add some extra space using our top margin control. So there we have it. Let's go ahead and visit this site. Boom, we have a hero section. So if you don't need anything too fancy, you're done. There's your hero section. It tells people what your site's about and what they can do while they're on your site. But hero sections can take a few different forms. If we look at our examples here, This one's pretty interesting because it's got this big screenshot, but it's overall a very similar layout. So let's go ahead and do this overlapping screenshot effect here with our existing hero. So we're going to be kind of sneaky and we're just going to grab this image off of their website because I don't have a product screenshot prepared. So this will just be much, much quicker. Now I like this kind of offset rotated effect here, and it actually has a little bit of an animation when we go in, which you can do in Oxygen with Oxygen's animate on scroll, but we probably won't get into that for this video because this is about basics and I don't want to get too detailed on advanced topics. But adding this image is definitely something we can cover. So let's add another section to give ourselves some room to scroll, and we're going to set the background color to kind of a dark purple here to follow our kind of purple theme so far. And let's set the height here to 100 VH, which will make it the height of our viewport. Perfect. Now we need to go ahead and add our image in. So because I want to do this kind of rotated background thing, I'm going to add it inside of a div. But if you didn't want to do that, you would just add an image directly. So let's add our div first and then our image. Now for the image, we'll go ahead and browse and drop in this one that we just downloaded. Select image. Looks great. Now the first bit of business here is this overlapping effect. So we want this to overlap into the section below. So we're going to remove the bottom padding on our hero section, and then we're going to select this div that the image is inside of. And I'll pull up the structure pane so you can see what I'm doing here. And we're going to go ahead and add a negative bottom margin, which allows that next section to kind of bump up underneath and behind it. We'll go to Advanced, Size and Spacing, and set the bottom margin to negative 300 pixels. And you can see here that it moved up about how far we want it. Now, I said it would move behind the image. It may not by default. As you can see here, it's not doing exactly what we want. So let's go ahead to Advanced Layout and raise that Z index to just 1, which will give us kind of the effect that we want. Now, the next bit we need to do is this rotation business. So let's go ahead and rotate our div first. Let's go to Advanced, Effects, Transform, and add a transform. We're going to add a rotate of negative, not 12. Let's go ahead and bump that up. We just want it to be slightly offset. So maybe negative 3 degrees. Now we need to counter rotate the image by twice, I think, what we rotated the container. So if we rotate it the opposite way by 3 degrees, it'll just be straight up and down. But we actually want it counter rotated more than that. So we'll go to Advanced, Effects, Transform, add a transform, and we'll do 3 degrees just to show you that's not exactly what we want. And then instead of that, we'll go 6 degrees. So we get that kind of overlapping crisscross effect. Now, while we're on the image, let's go ahead and set a border radius on this. Let's go to borders. Let's set it to 8 pixels to match our button. And did they have a box shadow on here? They don't. A box shadow might look nice though. So let's do that and we can remove it if we don't like it. So we'll go to Advanced, Effects, Box Shadow, and let's add something here. Let's do a very slightly lighter than black color. And then we'll adjust the settings here. Vertical offset, blur, shadow spread. Well, now we're not going to be able to see much because it's inset. We actually want to uncheck that box. And now we can probably see a little bit more of what's going on. So we're going to set the horizontal offset a little bit so that the shadow is mostly below our element. Actually, that should be vertical offset. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're moving that shadow down just a little bit. You can see it overlaying our purple background. And then our spread, we probably want to reduce that a bit. So let's increase the blur and then reduce the spread to like negative 15 pixels. So we get a very soft effect. Now to make it even softer, we can reduce the opacity of our shadow. Now this is going to become really apparent when we add a background color to the div that this image is inside of. So let's go ahead and set the background color to a like a purple color, maybe somewhere around there. And now you can see that shadow effect, which actually does look pretty nice. Let's go to Advanced, Borders, and set the border radius to 8 pixels. Now let's go ahead and save. But before we jump up to the front end, I do want to add some extra space below this button. So let's go ahead and select that. Go to Advanced, Size and Spacing and set the margin bottom to 32. Let's try 64. And let's save. jump up to the front end and see our handiwork. Now you can see this really nice hero effect. This image, again, entices us to scroll down and see what the rest of the image is going to show us. And it leads us seamlessly into the next section. So this is a really cool effect, and it didn't really take too much effort or anything advanced to achieve. Now let's take a look at cool ideas from these other heroes. Obviously, we've got some incredible art assets here. That's something that's kind of hard to replicate unless you just have those assets. But this hero is pretty basic. It just has a button and text just like ours. This one here is arranged a little bit differently. It's over to the left. And to do that in Oxygen, we could just use columns. And this one has a similar layout. So let's go ahead over here and let's adjust our hero. And let's make one more hero that uses that kind of left aligned layout. So we'll save this hero and duplicate it. And then we'll just go up here and get rid of the things we don't need. So we don't need this div anymore. We're definitely going to need a button still. Our text is basically the same, overline, heading, text, and then they have some icon and text pairs there, which we may or may not add. So to get this kind of left aligned layout, we actually don't even need columns because their image is a background image. So that's fine. We can do that. We just need to adjust the alignment of our section. And then we're going to want to make sure that our heading isn't so big. We're going to reduce that a bit, maybe 42 pixels. And then we want to make sure that it's not too wide either. So we'll go to advanced size and spacing and set the max width to something like 45%. And then, of course, we're going to make sure that this typography is aligned left now. So just like that, we now basically have this layout. We have the button, we have the title, overline, the text description. Now let's just go ahead and add a background image. So we'll go background. Now I did open up Pexels to try to find a product image that has something aligned kind of on the right side. That's the tricky part with this kind of layout is you need the image composition to be correct. So here's one. We'll go with this. Let's go ahead and download it and make sure you're using an appropriate sized image. We don't need a 4,000 pixel wide image for this case. Let's save that. And now we can jump over to Oxygen, browse to the background image and upload that. And then, of course, we're going to need to make some adjustments to make sure we have good font legibility. But let's first adjust the background position. So it's set to cover, which is good. No repeat. And then we can set the top position to 50%, which should get our product kind of in frame there. Now we have an issue of this text is black. Now, we might be able to fix it by just going white with this instead. Let's try it. And finally, this one here. That works pretty good, but it's not the best contrast ratio. Let's go ahead and add an overlay to this background image. So we'll go to Advanced Background on our section, and we'll go ahead and find our overlay field. And this will allow us to darken it. Now, what a lot of folks will do is they'll kind of pick a dark color like that and then just adjust the opacity until everything kind of stands out. And that looks pretty good, but it also de-emphasizes your product shot, which you may not want. So a little trick I like to do is to go to gradient instead, and we'll add a gradient where our dark color is going to be the first color, and then our second color is just going to be full transparency. So what this does is allows us to adjust the contrast behind our text while still leaving some emphasis for our product shot. And then we can, of course, adjust how this gradient is kind of laid out. So we could change where it starts to cross over. We could reduce that a bit as well to make that background color not as prominent towards the product shot. Let's do a negative 200 pixels. So now we have a darker color behind our white text, but our background image, our product shot, isn't de-emphasized too much. So that looks pretty good, and we have another hero section. We didn't really have to create a bunch of new elements. We reused the same elements we had because most heroes contain the same types of elements. Now, one final adjustment here, because this shot is kind of tall, let's go ahead and adjust our section padding here to make sure it's nice and visible when you visit the site. Let's bring this one up a little bit. And now we should have a much better effect on the front end. There we go. So to recap, a hero is just the stuff that's below your logo and usually your menu on your website. It's the section that people are going to see immediately when they visit your site, and it should do a few things. It should tell them who you are or what your website is for, any details you think they need to know to decide whether they should be here or whether they should do a thing, and then a call to action to do that thing, whether it's buy something, sign up for something, contact you, hire you, whatever the case may be. The hero section's job is to funnel the visitors into that action and make sure they're informed enough to know whether that action is for them or not. So again, this is Elijah with the Oxygen team, and that's a look at hero sections. Thank you very much for watching.